Right, in this video, we're going to quickly have a look at the ArrayList class in Java. So let me just read through these comments here. Standard Java arrays are of fixed length. We've seen that in all of our examples. When you set a length to it, you cannot change that length. That will be the number of elements that your specific array will have. After arrays are created, they cannot grow or shrink, which means that you must know in advance how many elements in an array will hold. So you need to decide how many numbers or string values or whatever your specific array must hold. Array lists are created with an initial size, and that's normally, I think, a size of 10. And when the size is exceeded, the collection is automatically enlarged, and when objects are removed, the array may always also be shrunk. So similar to an array list allows object storage, but unlike an array list object automatically expands when a new item is added and automatically shrinks when items are removed. So let's just see how we declare an array list. So you can see you start typing array list there, and it will pick it up in the java.util package. So let's just work with strings. Remember, you can only work with object types. So if you want to use integers, there's a class called integer, which you can use. But you cannot use the primitive data types, for example, int there. So if you want to use integers, you'll use the integer class there. Okay, so that's just the class that wraps itself around the normal primitive data type of integer. So for this example, we're going to use strings. So I'm going to say string names equals new array list, and that's all you need to do. That array list will now basically work exactly the same as a normal array, but the difference here is that this one will shrink and make itself bigger as you add or remove values. Okay, so in this case, in order to add something, remember in our previous examples, what we did was to say go to names at position 0 and go and add John. So now the difference here is not going to a specific index value like this using the block brackets there, but we'll say names. We're going to use some variables, some methods there, and we're going to use the add method to add something to it. So if I want to add James there, that is basically the same as saying names at position 0 equals John. So if I just say names.add James, then it will add at position 0 the value James at this case. If I say names.add, in the sequence that I'm adding my values, it will go into the specific index values. So if I say Peter there, Peter will then go into index position 2. Sorry, this one will be 0, that one will be 1. So let's just add a few more. I'm going to say names.add. Let's add those other values also. Let's use John again. And then go to names.add, and we add Jake again. Okay, so now you can see this one will obviously go to position 2, that one will go to position 3, and I can add as many values as I want here, and the array list will automatically increase its size if it's going over the default size, and it will shrink if you start removing elements. So you can only have the number of values that you've actually got in it. So in this case, it's James, Peter, John, and Jake that's inside of my array. Then or my array list. Now I can also add using a different method there, where I can say go to index number 4 and add to me the following value called Paul. So there's another way of adding where you can say put it in a specific position. That's like doing the same thing here. Go to name 0 and put John there. Now we're just saying go to index number 4 and then place Paul there, and you can see that will obviously then be position number 4. So if there's already something in position number 4, it will just move the rest down. So if I said this names.add 3 Paul, it means Paul will go in between John and Jake, and that one will now become 4, this one will become 3. So it will shift up the rest if you add it at a specific position. But if you use this one to say .set, that will replace a value at a specific position. So let's say the index will be 1. I'm going to replace what's currently saved as Peter there, and let's change that to Peters, which means that Peter will not exist anymore, but it will be replaced by Peters. Then you can also use another method called remove, which will remove an object at a specific position. So if I say remove 0 there, it will basically remove James totally from my array list, and it will not be there anymore. So let's see how we can create a for loop now to run through every element. The same thing again. I'm going to say integer I equals 0. And now remember your for loop. You can see the for loop here. We started at 0, and then we said I less than names.length. So now we're going to say I less than. So it's again names, but you can't use the length method here. There's no length, or no, sorry, not length method, a length variable there. There's no length, which means that we need to use something else called size. So essentially size is saying the same as what we used with length there. But remember, size will actually give you the exact number of values that's currently stored, not the size of your array list. It's the size of the number of the values that's currently stored. So it's essentially doing the same as what we had with our array. There we go. Right, so after this for loop, or inside of this for loop now, how do we print it out? So inside of the for loop, we just printed out names I, and that prints out the specific value. So now we can't say names I with an array list, the same as we couldn't have said names with the block brackets 0 there. So how do we print out values here? Let's just use a system out print line, and I'm going to say names. So instead of saying names I with an array, we're going to say names.get, and then you indicate the index value. So that's essentially doing the same thing. So saying get I will then get that specific object at that position and print it out. So if we run this quickly, let's run this one from there. You can see that we've got first one, Peters. Remember we changed it there, set 1 to Peters. So the one at position 1 should be Peters, then John, then Paul. Why Paul? Because you can see that we basically removed at position 0, we removed James there. So now obviously Peters will move up. Peters will be first, then John. You can see that we placed Paul into position 3, so then it will be Paul, and then Jake, and then we're done. And that is basically setting the value. So if we did not change anything here, so let's just keep this at... let's just not use the set method there, and we use add there. So then if we do not remove also anything there, just take it away, then this one will be 1, 2, that one will be at position 3, this one will be 4, and this one will be at position 5. So if we run this one now, you can see that when we go down, it will be James, Peter, John, Jake, Paul, and Peters. James, Peter, John, Jake, Paul, and Peters. Okay, so with the previous examples, we just moved the things around and removed some of them, but that's basically how it gets printed out. So this is the basics of the array list. In videos to come, we'll use the array list a lot, and that's it for the array list.